Good evening. In the next two episodes of our program, we want to deal with Chechnya to answer a few questions. In the Russian-Chechen conflict, Chechen resistance, an unequal balance of power, excessive violence against the civilian population, the stubbornness of the Russian government and the army, and the absolute silence of the West are especially striking. I wonder why. Today we will look at Chechen society and its history. Next week with two Chechen wars and their causes. The Russian Federation, with its capital Moscow, consists of 89 territorial units with different statuses, territories, regions and 21 republics. Chechnya is one of the republics. Compared to the Russian Federation, which extends over 17 million square kilometers, Chechnya is 16,000 square kilometers, and there live 700,000 of the 147 million inhabitants of Russia. Here you have the administrative data at the national level. But what about the regional level? This is the Caucasus region, a land bridge between the Black and Caspian Seas, which leads from Russia to the warm seas. However, the Caucasus with its peaks of more than 5,000 meters is difficult to overcome. That is why it has always been a convenient region for retreat. For Georgians around 2000 BC, Armenians in the 6th century BC, Azerbaijani Turks in the 12th century and today for resistance fighters in Chechnya. Numerous peoples with different cultures and languages settled in this region. Now they live south of the Greater Caucasus in Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia, and north of it in 7 out of 21 republics of the Russian Federation. So the Chechens are one of the North Caucasian peoples. They lived there for 2,000 years and, like their English neighbors, are Vainics and Caucasians. Therefore they do not speak Indo-European or Turkish. Now we turn to the ethnological data of the Chechen society, in which, unlike Russia, there were no princes. It was even a classless governmentless society, which to a certain extent was self-governing. Each community was autonomous and could not impose its will on anyone else. 9 stars on the Chechen flag symbolize 9 tribes, the so-called tukhums. Their cohesion is based on common ancestors and dialects. Each tribe formed an economic and military community of about 10 clans, teips, which got their name from a mountain or geographical name, and were based not on blood ties, but on common military and economic goals. You might think that all this has nothing to do with the Russian-Chechen conflict, but this is not so. First of all, clans show solidarity with each other in extreme situations, because if a person does not show enough courage in the fight against the enemy, he looks bad in the eyes of others because he contributes to general misfortune. And since moral law is an ARTE that regulates interpersonal relationships, it has always stood above foreign Russian or Soviet laws. Each Russian offensive, thus, contributed to solidarity between the clans and strengthened the Chechen national feeling. Another reason for the unity of the Chechens is their religion. Islam came from the Ottoman Empire and Persia in the 15th century and prevailed in Chechnya at the end of the 18th century. But contrary to popular belief, he is moderate, Sunni and fraternal. Because Chechens are adherents of Sufism, the mystical direction of Islam. There are 2 brotherhoods in Chechnya, Qadiriya and Naqshbandiya. 2 brothers of the same family, or 2 members of the same clan, may belong to 2 different brotherhoods. Therefore, brotherhoods assume the role of a judge in conflicts. In a sense, Chechen society is formed by an opposing clan system and Sufism. Finally, Russia shares responsibility for Chechen national feelings. At the end of the 16th century, Russia was only a continental power, which, because of its internal situation, sought to gain access to the southern seas, the Black Sea and the Dardanelles, which were controlled by the Ottoman Empire from the 17th century. Crossing the Caucasus, Russian troops primarily sought access to the warm seas and were not interested in the North Caucasian peoples, the colonization of which was not even discussed. But even in their first campaign in the 18th century, the troops of Peter the Great and Catherine the Great were surprised by the resistance of these peoples. Especially well known are the uprisings of Sheikh Mansour from 1785 to 91 years, and the Dagestan Imam Shamil, the Sufi of the Brotherhood of Naqshbandiya from 1835 to 59 years. Therefore, it was important for Russia to break the resistance in the North Caucasus. The peoples living there were now drawn into extremely fierce battles and nearly destroyed, such as the Uzbeks. Circassians were expelled or fled to the Ottoman Empire, and the territories of Dagestan and Chechens were occupied by Slavic immigrants. In 1859, 98,000 people lived in Chechnya, and the Russian army numbered 113,000. In addition to the sad resemblance to the current situation, the resistance of the North Caucasus in the 19th century had three common denominators: Islam, the preservation of independence, which until now was accessible to all peoples, and the languages of Islam, Arabic, and Turkish, in which the Caucasian peoples communicated with each other. At the beginning of the 20th century, the resistance of the North Caucasian peoples during the violent uprisings of 1921, 1924, 1928, 1937 was organized during the Bolshevik and Soviet regimes. Then Stalin tried to break the solidarity of the peoples about the rules and principles of which he personally knew as any Georgians. His tactic was to divide the administrative zone into Soviet socialist republics, such as Georgia in Russia, and so-called autonomous republics, such as Chechen and Ingushetia, as part of the Russian Republic. Circassians and Kabardians, having a common language, were divided and united with the Turkic-speaking peoples in the Karachay-Cherkess Republic on the one hand and Kabardino-Balkaria on the other. Of course, this seems complicated, but in the end, Stalin succeeded in his tactics. Due to administrative divisions, small and tribal structures faded into the background and conflicts arose between ethnic groups. As a result, these peoples ceased to threaten the Russian central government. But this was not enough for Stalin. In February 1944, Stalin ordered the Chechen people to be deported to Siberia and Kazakhstan for reasons that have not yet been clarified, and under the far-fetched pretext of cooperation between the Chechens and the army of Nazi Germany. An estimated 200,000 people have died, one-third of the 600,000 Chechens. The deportation ended with the rehabilitation of the Chechen people only in 1957. This colonization and deportation deprived the Chechens of their country and destroyed the bonds of solidarity, which ultimately contributed to the emergence of modern nationalism. Geography, history, language and social structures, all of these elements have become the basis of the stubborn Chechen resistance as we know it today. This is the background of today's Chechen wars, except that Russia is no longer seeking access to warm seas and Soviet ideology no longer exists for application, in principle at least. So why is Russia so tough with these people? To find out, next week we want to try to understand the Russian position as much as possible. Alexandra Dumas tells of the resistance of Imam Shamil, which I mentioned earlier, in the book Shamil, et la résistance tchétchène contre les Russes by Nautilus. Laurence Binet's book Le Chardon Tchétchène by Siroz Jeunesse and the very good book by Russian journalist Anna Polikovskaya Checheny, Le Déchaîneur russe by Boucher Chastel are also recommended.